In a world where power and money often clash, a new financial leak could change everything we thought we knew about politics. A salary that doesn't match up with the lifestyle, a story that's being told in whispers, and a career that's moving faster than anyone expected. How did one congresswoman rise to this level of wealth and influence in such a short time? Jasmine Crockett, a rising star in Congress. Known for her progressive views and strong stance on social justice, she became a beacon of hope for many. But with her rapid rise came something unexpected. How does someone earning $180,000 a year afford to buy million-dollar properties, all while pushing policies meant to help the poor and middle class? What doesn't add up? That's the question at the center of the investigation into Crockett's financial dealings. How did she afford a $5 million estate, a $2.5 million lake house, and a $1.5 million townhouse, all within less than a year? And why, despite claiming transparency, does she continue to hide her true financial activity? The Department of Government Efficiency, or DOGE, a new government agency tasked with rooting out corruption, has been quietly reviewing Crockett's financial records, and what they found is as astonishing as it is disturbing. There are travel expenses not disclosed, passee contributions that contradict everything Crockett has publicly claimed, and ties to foreign governments and shady NGOs. In steps Elon Musk, yes, the same billionaire mogul who's made a name for himself in the tech world, with ventures ranging from electric cars to space exploration. But Musk isn't just looking for innovation in space. He's taking aim at something much more grounded: political corruption. Musk isn't one to back down when it comes to truth. After years of speaking out against government inefficiency and corruption, Musk's involvement in the investigation into Crockett seems almost inevitable. But it's not just Musk acting alone. DOGE, the department dedicated to exposing the truth behind political finance, has been digging into the heart of this financial scandal. Their findings are shocking and paint a troubling picture of how power is often used to enrich the few at the expense of the many. What's more disturbing, though, is how this financial sleight of hand is happening right under the noses of the American people. It's not about cash being exchanged in dark alleys anymore. No, this is a new kind of corruption, hidden behind the facades of well-meaning NGOs, travel expenses that aren't disclosed, and the involvement of international figures. It's a web of money, influence, and power that circles back to the very heart of Washington, D.C. The real question now is, why is Crockett so determined to conceal this? What's really at the heart of this investigation? And why is Elon Musk so determined to expose it to the world? Because it's not just about one congresswoman and her questionable finances. It's about something much bigger: the systems that allow this kind of corruption to flourish in plain sight. It's about the elite, the politicians, and the money that flows in and out of government, often with no oversight and no accountability. Now, the stage is set for an emergency hearing. Musk's team, alongside DOGE, is ready to present their findings. What's about to be revealed is not just an expose on Crockett, but on the very system that enables this kind of behavior. And it could change everything. But the truth is, this is just the beginning. The game is far from over, and Musk's words have already set the stage for a showdown. What happens next? Will Crockett be held accountable, or will this scandal simply fade away like so many others before it? Stay tuned. This is going to be a ride you don't want to miss. Jasmine Crockett's journey to prominence in American politics is the kind of story that inspires. She started from humble beginnings, born and raised in the heart of Dallas, Texas, a place where ambition often meets struggle. Crockett's early years were marked by a fierce determination to create change. She excelled academically, securing a law degree from one of the country's top universities. Her passion for social justice drove her to take on cases where the disadvantaged needed someone to stand up for them. She wasn't just another attorney. She was a voice for the unheard. It wasn't long before Crockett's legal expertise and commitment to justice caught the attention of the political world. With the rise of activism across the country, especially among communities of color, Crockett quickly became a champion for progressive causes. Her platform was built on fighting for the marginalized, advocating for healthcare reform, education, and police accountability. She was an outspoken critic of the system that she believed kept the disadvantaged trapped in cycles of inequality. By 2020, Crockett was elected to the Texas State House of Representatives, where her popularity continued to surge. People admired her directness, her no-nonsense approach to tackling tough issues, and her ability to connect with voters. She became known as someone who wasn't afraid to speak truth to power. It wasn't just her supporters who took notice. Corporate giants, lobbyists, lobbyists, and fellow politicians quickly saw that Crockett was someone who could be an ally, or someone they'd have to reckon with. Her rise in the political world seemed almost unstoppable, but with power came scrutiny. As Crockett ascended through the political ranks, so did the questions surrounding her finances. While her public image as a champion for the people remained intact, whispers about her growing wealth began to surface. These whispers would soon become a full-blown investigation, one that threatened to uncover far more than anyone expected. Crockett's salary was meant to be publicly available, and on paper, it seemed fairly average for someone in her position, $180,000 per year. This figure was enough to live comfortably, but certainly not to afford the kind of lavish lifestyle that she appeared to be leading. The problem? The math simply didn't add up. In her first year as a state representative, Crockett bought a $1.3 million townhouse in one of the most exclusive neighborhoods in Dallas. A year later, she purchased a sprawling lake house, a property valued at nearly $2 million. And yet, all of this came at a time when Crockett's salary remained fixed at $180,000. The question on everyone's mind: how could she afford this? This was the first clue that something was amiss. While Crockett had always been vocal about income inequality and the disparity between the rich and the poor, her own financial situation was becoming increasingly difficult to explain. Was she the beneficiary of extraordinary real estate deals? Or was there another, less visible source of income that was fueling her spending? But it wasn't just the properties that raised eyebrows. Crockett's travel expenses seemed equally extravagant. High-end vacation retreats to international destinations, lavish gala appearances, and luxury hotel stays. All of this seemed far outside the means of someone earning a six-figure salary. How could a public servant living on $180,000 afford to live this way? It didn't make sense. And so, the questions began to pile up. At first, it seemed like a series of isolated incidents: unexplained travel expenses, a few too many expensive gifts, and more than one case of Crockett attending lavish events with mysterious funding. But as the months went by, these anomalies began to add up in a way that no one could ignore. Was Crockett hiding something? Her finances were, by all accounts, a carefully crafted facade. While she publicly presented herself as an advocate for the people, the reality behind her spending patterns told a different story. Behind the scenes, her financial dealings were far from transparent. Crockett had always been a savvy politician, well aware of how to use her influence and her connections to her advantage. But in this case, it was her spending habits that were coming under scrutiny. The first hint of trouble came when financial disclosures began to show strange gaps. Expenses that weren't fully accounted for or listed as miscellaneous without any explanation. These were just small inconsistencies at first, but the more investigators dug, the more troubling patterns emerged. There were the unexplained flights to foreign destinations. There were the luxury retreats funded by third-party organizations with no clear ties to her campaign or public service work. There were even donations that seemed to come from corporate PACs that Crockett had previously spoken out against. What was truly strange, however, was Crockett's response. She brushed off these financial concerns, offering vague explanations and deflecting any direct questioning, but her actions spoke louder than her words. Every time she was asked about her financial dealings, the answers became more convoluted, the inconsistencies more apparent. Crockett was not acting like someone with nothing to hide. She was acting like someone who had a great deal to lose. Her defenders, however, continued to stand by her, insisting that she had done nothing illegal or unethical. They argued that Crockett was simply a successful public servant who had made smart investments and capitalized on her fame to earn money outside of her government salary. But as more details came to light, the public skepticism began to grow. It wasn't long before the scrutiny turned into full-blown investigation. The first signs of a deeper problem appeared when the Department of Government Efficiency, DOGE, began quietly reviewing Crockett's financial disclosures. DOGE, created specifically to root out corruption and financial misconduct in government, had a simple mission: to ensure that public servants were playing by the same rules as everyone else. And DOGE had the resources to uncover the truth. The investigation into Crockett's finances wasn't just about her lavish spending. It was about connecting the dots between her personal wealth and the political decisions she had been making. Was there a hidden influence behind her wealth? Were foreign governments or powerful lobbyists involved in financing her rise? As DOGE began its investigation, the truth started to take shape. But what they uncovered was far more complex than anyone could have imagined. Crockett's financial dealings were entangled with corporate PACs, international NGOs, and foreign governments, all of which had a stake in the decisions she was making in Congress. The revelations were shocking, and they only raised more questions about how far Crockett was willing to go to protect her financial empire. It was clear that this was no longer just a simple case of financial mismanagement. management. Crockett's political rise had become inextricably linked to her wealth, and the investigation was quickly turning into something far more explosive. The public was beginning to demand answers, and soon the entire nation would be watching as the truth behind her rise to power began to unfold. That day marked a turning point, a shift that no one saw coming, but everyone would soon feel. The Department of Government Efficiency, known simply as DOGE, wasn't your average bureaucratic watchdog. It was created with a singular purpose: to investigate and expose financial discrepancies among public officials, especially when their lifestyles far outpaced their declared incomes. And this time, the target was Jasmine Crockett. DOGE wasn't born out of red tape and slow-moving committees. It was sparked by urgency, and behind its rise stood one name that guaranteed headlines: Elon Musk. Known for disrupting industries, Musk brought that same relentless energy to government accountability. He didn't just fund DOGE, he built it as a tech-driven, data-focused powerhouse, blending artificial intelligence with financial forensics. Musk made it clear from the beginning, transparency isn't just an ideal, it's survival for democracy. With that mindset, DOGE recruited top-tier analysts, cyber investigators, forensic accountants, and behavioral experts. Their mission? Comb through every layer of Crockett's financial disclosures, property records, travel expenses, and hidden affiliations. At first glance, nothing screamed illegal, but the deeper they dug, the louder the alarm bells rang. Luxury properties purchased in cash, first-class international flights not disclosed in congressional travel logs, lavish retreats sponsored by international research NGOs that barely existed on paper. It wasn't just a paper trail, it was a pattern, a web of financial shadows that wrapped around Crockett's public image like a well-tailored disguise. One analyst put it simply: the numbers didn't lie, they whispered secrets. The turning point came when DOGE discovered several high-cost international trips under the guise of diplomatic outreach, all funded by ambiguous third-party organizations. None were listed in public disclosures, none had clear agendas, and yet all seemed to end with unexplained financial gains, property acquisitions, sudden campaign surges, and personal luxury upgrades. Every document led to another question. Every answer led to another file. It wasn't a coincidence. It was a system, a well-oiled machine hidden in plain sight. And Elon Musk wasn't going to let it stay hidden much longer. It started with a spreadsheet, one entry among thousands, barely noticeable unless you knew what to look for. A line item from a corporate PAC, neatly recorded, quietly processed, but it was the beginning of a thread that, when pulled, unraveled a much larger picture. Jasmine Crockett had long positioned herself as a progressive voice, vocal against corporate influence in politics. Her speeches were peppered with strong statements. "We don't need big money controlling our future," she once said. But behind the curtain, the numbers told a different story. The Department of Government Efficiency, DOGE analysts, noticed a pattern, a cluster of contributions from political action committees that didn't align with Crockett's public image. Telecom giants, beverage industry lobbies, even private prison investors, entities Crockett had seemingly opposed, had funneled thousands into her campaign through PACs. Not directly, not obviously, but consistently. The PAC system, though legal, thrives on complexity. Corporations can't donate to candidates directly, but they can form PCs, organizations designed to influence elections and legislation. These PACs donate to candidates whose platforms align with their goals, or more strategically, to those who can be swayed. In Crockett's case, it wasn't just about the money, it was about timing. Her campaign received boosts from telecom PACs just weeks before she softened her stance on broadband deregulation. Beverage PACs donated as a sugar tax proposal quietly vanished from her agenda. And during debates over criminal justice reform, Crockett delayed key votes, while private prison-linked PACs increased their support. Each link was subtle, on its own, dismissible, but together it formed a clear narrative. Corporate influence didn't knock on her door, it walked right in, but that was only half the storm. DOGE's deeper dive exposed something far more troubling, an international funding loop cloaked in the language of aid and diplomacy. Foreign NGOs, registered as charitable or research entities, had quietly been financing trips for Crockett under the banner of cultural exchange or climate dialogue. None were disclosed. None matched her congressional schedule. These weren't small educational visits. They were week-long stays in luxury resorts, yacht rentals, high-end wellness retreats. Destinations ranged from the Maldives to private islands off the coast of Greece. When DOGE traced the financial trail, they found that many of these NGOs were linked to foreign governments or shadow donors with vested interests in U.S. policy. One particularly jarring discovery was a $72,000 travel package disguised as a green energy free research tour. The destination? A beachfront property in the Seychelles, hosted by an NGO with zero published research and no physical office. The trip ended with Crockett purchasing a small estate in Dallas, paid in full within days of her return. Analysts raised the obvious question: was foreign aid being laundered through NGOs to reward or influence U.S. lawmakers? DOGE couldn't answer that definitively, not yet. But what they could prove was that Crockett never reported these trips, nor the gifts and luxuries that accompanied them. And while the law on third-party travel is murky, the ethics were clear. Crockett's public stance had always been firm, against big money, against foreign influence, against corruption. But the evidence now painted a picture of contradiction, one that couldn't be ignored. A senior DOGE investigator described it bluntly. Crockett's luxury vacation spots weren't funded by tax dollars, but by third-party entities who had more than just vacation plans in mind. The growing scandal gained momentum. Whispers turned to headlines. News outlets began piecing together the connections. And the public, once disarmed by Crockett's charm and convictions, started asking hard questions. How deep did this go? And more importantly, how long had it been hidden in plain sight? It wasn't supposed to land on Elon Musk's desk, not directly. The DOGE analysts had been working quietly, feeding updates to internal teams, circling around inconsistencies, matching dates, scanning disclosures. But the moment the Seychelles file surfaced, the one with timestamps, wire transfers, and backdoor NGO routes, Musk requested a full review. He didn't ask, he instructed. In the dimly lit Situation Room at DOGE's central HQ, Elon leaned over a digital wallboard filled with pins, links, timelines. Crockett's financial patterns blinked in red, PAC donations synchronized with key votes, international NGO trips layered against acquisition of assets, encrypted communication logs not yet cracked, but clearly suspicious. I want every node verified, every cent traced, and I want it airtight, Musk said, tapping the board. If this is what it looks like, we're not just dealing with ethical rot. We're dealing with systemic camouflage. For hours, he worked with DOGE's top forensic analysts, running simulations, building out a web of influence that stretched far beyond what had been reported. It wasn't just about the numbers now. It was about the intent, the structure, the silent machinery that allowed a congresswoman on a $180,000 salary to build an empire hidden in asset trusts and shell transfers. 2 days later, a meeting was called. The room was small, intentionally. No aides, no press. Just Elon Musk, DOGE's chief compliance officer, 2 senior investigators, and Jasmine Crockett herself. She arrived composed, wearing the calm of someone who thought she could talk her way out of anything. Musk didn't waste time. He handed her a tablet. On it, a summary of the findings, the timeline of deposits, a breakdown of PAC contributions with matching legislation timestamps, a map of her travel cross-referenced with NGO funding records and real estate purchases. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't accuse. He just let the facts sit between them like a blade. It's not just about what you've done, he said calmly. It's about what you think we can't see. Crockett scanned the report, jaw tightening. This is political, she muttered. You're trying to make an example. Musk shook his head slightly. The truth doesn't care about politics. There was a long silence before he continued. You stood on stages and said PACs corrupt democracy. Then you turned around and banked $372,450 in PAC money in under 18 months. She started to respond, but he raised a hand. And the foreign travel? He pressed. 6 countries, 5 undisclosed trips, luxury suites, private chefs, chartered flights, all paid by educational partners that don't even have a mailing address. Crockett tried to defend herself. Nothing illegal, she said, almost defiantly. You can't prove, Musk cut in softly. Maybe not in court, but in the court of public trust, you've already lost. Later that night, DOGE called for an emergency session. The vote was unanimous. By dawn, the report was finalized. Its language was clear, direct, unfiltered, a break from bureaucratic jargon. Musk insisted on it. In an emergency session, the report read, DOGE released their findings: $372,450 in PAC contributions, $68,000 in undisclosed foreign travel, and a political career hiding behind a veil of hypocrisy. The report highlighted 3 key violations. 1. Failure to disclose sponsored international travel. 2. Acceptance of funds from PACs misaligned with publicly stated policy. And 3. Asset accumulation beyond reasonable explanation based on income and declared investments. It hit the media like a seismic wave. The press release included Musk's closing quote, "We're not here to punish. We're here to expose the truth. And sometimes that's the only accountability left." By noon, Crockett's team had gone dark. No statements, no rebuttals, just a locked door, a drawn curtain, and a silence that said more than any speech ever could. The morning after DOGE's emergency release, the media exploded like a dam had burst. Every major outlet carried the headline, and within hours, news choppers hovered hovered over Crockett's estate. Satellite trucks lined the streets. Commentators on both sides of the political spectrum spun their own versions, but no one could escape the sheer weight of the numbers. $372,450 in PAC money, $68,000 in undisclosed international trips, assets grossly outpacing declared income. CNN flashed red banners calling it a public trust meltdown. Fox News dubbed it the $180,000 mirage. Even apolitical platforms like Vice and Vox ran deep dives, exposing the mechanism of NGO money laundering and the hidden strings attached to foreign-funded educational retreats. News tickers scrolled day and night. Talk shows dissected every sentence from Doge's report like it was a national autopsy. Public reaction hit harder and faster. Social media, always on fire, became an inferno. TikTok-S, with sarcastic overlays of Crockett's campaign speeches, gained millions of views within hours. A tweet, quoting her old anti-PAC stance, next to a snapshot of the Doge report, hit 10 million impressions in less than 6 hours. Instagram stories from political watchdogs, student groups, and even celebrities started using a common hashtag, #PACgate. People weren't just angry, they felt betrayed. She said she was different, one user wrote. This isn't left or right, this is just wrong, posted another. A 40-second reel of Musk calmly speaking at a press conference, no podium, no teleprompter, just a handheld mic and a folded paper in his pocket, began circulating like wildfire. His voice was calm, his expression unshaken. When facts speak, he said, pausing. Silence follows. That line hit harder than any accusation. It didn't scream, it didn't accuse, it just stated what everyone already felt, that truth didn't need to shout when it had nothing to hide. But silence wasn't Crockett's strategy. By the afternoon, her office released a formal statement. It began with legal language, citing that she had broken no laws, violated no campaign finance codes in a criminal capacity, and had adhered to standard reporting procedures. But the tone grew defensive. She claimed she was being singled out, that this was a tech billionaire's vendetta fueled by political motives, that she had, quote, always worked within the framework provided to me. That same evening, she held a press conference, her team clearly scrambling to reclaim the narrative. She wore a dark suit, her expression hardened, but her voice trembled ever so slightly. I want the public to know that I have done nothing illegal. I have never compromised my values, she said, looking directly into the cameras. I am being persecuted for being effective, for standing up where others stayed silent. But the words fell flat. Something in the delivery lacked conviction, and the public could feel it. No tears, no real denial, just rehearsed lines wrapped in legalese. As the press conference wrapped, the buzz of questions from reporters filled the room. Questions she didn't answer, questions she walked away from. Back online, the backlash intensified. Analysts broke down her statement frame by frame, comparing it to prior speeches and matching her words against new data unearthed by Doge journalists from independent outlets. Published her travel invoices, showing a trip to Paris billed under a youth development summit, which, according to participants, was held entirely online. The contrast was glaring. A lavish stay at the Ritz, while young delegates attended via Zoom. The story had outgrown her. It was no longer about one congresswoman's choices. It had become a symbol of a broken system, of hypocrisy cloaked in populist branding. Musk, meanwhile, gave no further press conference, no long speeches, just a short message shared via Doge's official X account. The truth isn't viral, it's steady, it waits, and when it arrives, it doesn't knock. It walks right through the front door. That quote alone racked up over 2 million shares. And Crockett? She kept posting, but fewer were listening. Every tweet became a battlefield. Every defense sparked a new thread of receipts. Her defenders sounded less certain, her critics more unified. For the first time since her rise to national recognition, Crockett was no longer the voice challenging the system. She had become the system in question. She could say she did nothing illegal, but the truth was already out, and it didn't need a courtroom to be believed. The hearing room was sterile and silent, dimly lit and stripped of theatrics. No cameras, no press, just a long mahogany table, documents stacked in folders, and the air so tense it could slice through steel. The room wasn't built for show, it was built for confrontation. Elon Musk sat across from Jasmine Crockett, his posture relaxed but deliberate, eyes steady. Crockett walked in with shoulders squared, a sharp navy blazer hiding the unease she couldn't quite suppress. No opening statements, no speeches, just questions. Musk didn't waste time. He slid a folder across the table, a compilation of foreign travel reports. Let's start here, he said quietly. 4 international trips in the last 18 months, none disclosed in your financial forms. Why? Crockett didn't blink. They were educational exchanges, all within the bounds of legal reporting. Musk leaned forward, flipping a page. Except the hosting organizations were NGOs linked to foreign lobbying firms, and the flights were first class, the hotels 5-star, co-star, and the speaking engagements undocumented. She raised her chin. I was invited. I don't control who books the flights, but you do control what you disclose. And that's not just about money. That's about honesty. A pause. She shifted in her chair. Is this an inquiry or a personal crusade? Musk didn't smile. He didn't flinch. This is a review of facts. You're either here to explain them or to avoid them. Crockett's eyes narrowed. You're twisting the truth. You're reading motives where there are none. He tapped on another document. Then let's talk about this donation. $75,000 from a telecom PAC. The same month you voted against a bill that would have placed restrictions on their pricing models. That's a coincidence, she said, voice rising slightly. A convenient one. Silence. Musk continued, voice calm but firm. You campaigned on refusing corporate PAC money, but the records show otherwise. Beverage lobbies, real estate developers, pharmaceutical groups, all with legislation pending, all with contributions on file. Crockett crossed her arms. You don't understand the game. You think it's just black and white. You have no idea how Washington works. He tilted his head. No, I do. That's the problem. She laughed bitterly. You come in here with your tech money and your cameras and act like you're saving democracy. You're just performing. Musk stayed quiet for a moment, letting the words hang. Then he spoke, slowly. You're not fighting for the people. You're fighting to protect a system that thrives on keeping people in the dark. That's not leadership. That's camouflage. Her tone cracked then. You don't get to call me out. You don't get to judge me. He met her gaze, steady, sharp. I'm not here to judge. I'm here to expose. That sentence sat in the air like thunder before the lightning. No need to raise his voice. No need to convince. The data already had. Crockett sat back, jaw tight, eyes flickering, not defeated, but deflecting, as if holding on to a version of truth that even she no longer fully believed. Musk closed the folder gently. We'll release the full transcripts to the oversight board. The public will know the rest. No gavel, no verdict, no press conference waiting outside. Just two people, one defending a castle of excuses, the other holding the receipts that made the walls crumble. And in the silence that followed, even Crockett knew the fight wasn't about guilt or innocence anymore. It was about exposure, and she'd just been seen. The press conference wasn't grand. No velvet curtain reveals, no podium drenched in flags. Just Elon Musk standing in front of a wall of journalists, wearing the same dark jacket he had in the closed-door hearing. Cameras clicked, microphones extended. The room was buzzing with questions, but Musk didn't rush. He stood there for a moment, letting the silence settle. Then, with calm clarity, he began. This was never about Jasmine Crockett, he said. Not entirely. This was about a system that protects itself at all costs. A system that rewards silence, disguises influence, and counts on the public never looking too closely. The reporters stayed quiet, absorbing every word. We found $372,450 in PAC money linked to corporate interests, all during key legislative windows. We found foreign travel worth tens of thousands of dollars hidden behind the veil of NGO invitations. We found decisions being made not in the public's best interest but in quiet rooms with quiet transactions. He paused, not for drama, but to let the weight settle. It's not about one person or one scandal. It's about the system, and it's time the American people saw it for what it truly is. There was no anger in his voice, no gloating, just exhaustion, the kind that comes from pulling a truth into daylight after it's lived too long in shadows. He ended with a simple line. We didn't win. We revealed. And that was enough. When the cameras shut off and the press packed up, the echo of Musk's words remained louder than the questions that followed. There was no spin to this story, just numbers, dates, and choices made in darkness that now lived in light. Back at Crockett's office, the lights were still on, but no one was answering calls. The inboxes were full, the social media accounts quiet. Her usual force of presence, sharp tweets, media rebuttals, fiery speeches, had vanished, as if silence was now her last remaining shield. The political machine didn't halt, but something shifted. Even allies paused. Even networks hesitated before offering her airtime. The confidence around her name cracked, not shattered, but undeniably scarred. There was no formal resignation, no arrest, but there was uncertainty, the kind that seeps into every next step. And in that quiet, the public did what they rarely get to do: reflect, scroll back, connect dots, think beyond headlines, because once you've seen behind the curtain, the illusion doesn't work the same. And in the space between the last camera flash and the next political headline, a question lingered. What happens when the truth isn't just a whisper, but a roar? In the end, it wasn't just a financial probe. It was a mirror, one that showed far more than just one politician's shadow. The investigation that began with a single leaked salary figure grew into a detailed audit of trust, power, and what happens behind the scenes of public service. What started with a simple question, how does a congresswoman afford a millionaire's lifestyle on a public servant's salary, ended up unraveling a chain of connections, contributions, and favors that had been hiding in plain sight. Jasmine Crockett didn't fall overnight. And maybe she didn't fall at all in the traditional sense. No orange jumpsuit, no courtroom drama. But the toll was undeniable. Her credibility, once a sharp blade in public debates, was dulled. Her public support thinned. Even those who once applauded her fire began to question what had been fueling it all along. The findings spoke louder than any accusation ever could. Nearly $400,000 in PAC money, unreported foreign retreats under the guise of NGO diplomacy, and a voting record that aligned too neatly with her donors' agendas. Transparency wasn't just lacking, it was crafted to appear full while hiding the key details. But this wasn't just her story. It was about the system that allowed it, enabled it, rewarded it. The illusion of transparency, smiling press conferences, thick ethics reports, neatly curated social media pages, masked a reality where influence was traded like currency and accountability was more performance than principle. Elon Musk and DOGE didn't just investigate a person, they interrogated a pattern. They peeled back the layers of carefully packaged public service and exposed the uncomfortable truth. Many of the rules weren't broken because they were never meant to prevent the abuse. They were written to protect the game, not the players. Crockett may have been the headline, but she wasn't the only name in the book. She just happened to be the one whose story got caught in the light first. And now, the American public has a choice: forget what they saw or demand more. Not just more investigations, but more truth, more real transparency, less noise, more action. Because in a world where wealth disguises itself as service and access is confused with influence, silence can no longer be the default response. The cost of looking away is always higher than the discomfort of facing what's real. So the final question isn't just about Crockett. The game is rigged. The players are many. And the question that lingers long after the press has moved on is simple, sharp, and haunting. Who's next?